I don't understand why people are celebrating him being killed, because at the end of the day, like I said yesterday, he's dead. His kids don't got no father. That 26-year-old Luigi or whatever his name is, he's gonna be in jail for the rest of his life. And the healthcare system is still the same today.
Nothing changes.
The healthcare company's still denying claims and everything today. So what did that accomplish? And why are you happy about him being gunned down like that?
Good question. Charlemagne the God there ripping those seen as celebrating the suspect accused of murdering the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. Some people online casting Luigi Mangione in a positive light as they air their grievances with the industry. Bari Weiss, editor of the Free Press, is here now. Good morning to you. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for having me.
All right. First of all, here is Bernie Sanders talking about some comments that Elizabeth Warren made about this here.
Elizabeth Warren obviously understands killing and murder and shooting somebody in the back is totally unacceptable. But what I think has happened in the last few months is that what you have seen rising up is people's anger at a health insurance industry.
It can't be apples to apples in all of this. You guys are right. Political violence happens because we let it. What the 60s and 70s tell us about Luigi Mangione and the UHZ shooting.
There's no but.
Where's this going?
Well, I think one thing that's important to keep in mind, and that Charles Layman writes about in that piece that you just cited, is to kind of remind people that this killing of Brian Thompson is part of a pattern of normalized political violence over the past decade or so. You have Steve Scalise, the attempted assassination. You have Gabby Giffords. You have the violent rioting of the BLM summer that was normalized as fiery but mostly peaceful, unforgettably, by CNN. You have, of course, January 6th. You have the pro-Hamas riots. You have protests regularly now at the homes of Supreme Court justices. You have even people like a liberal museum curator in Brooklyn whose apartment building was targeted and attacked. Why? Because she's Jewish and therefore a Zionist and therefore unacceptable. My point is that we have normalized an ideology that suggests that certain people, because of their identity, because of their jobs, or because of their political outlook, are somehow ripe and, in fact, justifiable targets for violence. The very same group of people, Bill and Dana, who like to tell us that silence is violence, are going out and justifying the cold-blooded murder of a father of two. How is that? How does that comport? How do you make sense of that? And the only way you make sense of it is if you understand that they are operating from a principle in which certain groups are acceptable targets and other groups are unacceptable ones. Other groups are protected. And this is kind of a Manichaean view of the world that is absolutely unacceptable. Either political violence is wrong or it isn't. What we know for sure is that you cannot have a functioning liberal democracy like the one we have and accept that certain people are allowed to be murdered in the streets of Manhattan.
Just to put a fine point on it, this is what Charles writes about. He says political violence cannot coexist with a functioning democracy.
Yes.
Democracy depends on peaceful liberation, allowing each person to have her say, while violence replaces the ballot box with the bullet. If we want the latter, we must be unambiguous in our condemnation of the former, end quote.
And also, let's wait a second and just find out, like, what really went on with this man.
Right.
The suspected killer. He didn't have United Health Insurance. But he hadn't been denied a claim.
But even if he did, right? The idea,
I agree.
Right. It's the idea that I saw this unbelievable tweet that was going viral. Maybe you guys saw it. There was some DJ that had it set over the weekend, and there were just giant flashing photos of Luigi Mangione,
Terrible.
And the crowd is going wild for it.
Right.
There's something like very, very rotten in a culture where that has become not just acceptable, but somehow like cool and
So
chic.
how do we turn it around?
We re-stigmatize political violence and we shame, frankly, any person that is trying to contextualize something that there's no context that makes this acceptable. You murdered a person that is the father of two.
People like you
Full stop. That's it.
You also wrote about, we had Terry Glavin. I read this over the weekend. The explosion of Jew hate in Trudeau's Canada. The subhead is that there's been a 670% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the past year. It was like a dam burst. What happened and why the Free Press investigates? What did you find out?
Wow. What we found out is that it's not so much that the fabric of Canadian civil society has been torn. It's that anti-Semitism has been woven in to the fabric of civil society in Canada. I have to tell you, we have reported, as you guys know, on so many things, so many important stories over the past year. This might be one of the most important and one of the most alarming, because what it shows is the way that anti-Semitic violence, assaults, stigmatization of Jews, stigmatization of Jewish businesses has been completely normalized. I think it will shock most of your viewers that there are a number of people in Canada, not just Gad Saad, a professor that many people have heard about, but Jewish doctors, Jewish professionals, parents of Jewish kids that are talking about fleeing Canada because of the normalization of anti-Semitic violence. And the question is, how did this happen? It happened because a group of ideologues have managed to convince massive numbers of people and also have taken over critical liberal institutions in Canada and have put forward a view of the world in which Zionism, which is very simple. It's the belief that the Jews, like many other people, have a right to a homeland in their indigenous land, in the land of Israel, and part of it, at least. They have normalized the idea that Zionism is not the movement for Jewish self-determination, but that it is actually racist, that it is actually white supremacist, that it is actually a movement for Jewish supremacy. And when you have successfully put forward that view, and the vast majority of Jews identify as Zionists, suddenly they become justifiable targets for stigmatization and violence.
So
guys, one synagogue in Toronto since April has been assaulted or attacked, the windows shattered, attacked 7 times since April. One single synagogue in Toronto.
We saw a lot of ugly scenes in America last year. Is it worse in Canada? Is that what you're concluding?
Yes, what we are hearing from people is that if Poilievre and Melissa Landsman, who's his deputy, if the Conservatives do not take power in Canada and the government and the policies of Trudeau continue, we will be leaving Canada. That's what people I know are telling me. They believe that America is certainly not as far gone as Canada, and frankly, we don't have the same demographic issues in Canada. 1 in 20 Canadians is Muslim. It's a really important stat to keep in mind. There are 40 million Canadians, only 350,000 of them are Jews. So the demographics of Canada are changing. And if you want to understand why it is that certain politicians have embraced a sort of hostile posture toward Israel, why Trudeau, the Prime Minister, is talking about arresting him if Bibi Netanyahu comes on Canadian soil. In part, it's because of what we show in this piece. You have politicians saying, have you looked at the demographics of my riding? It's simply bad politics now to support the state of Israel and to support Jews. And I think that's a really important aspect to this story.
So much good content to be found on the Free Press. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Stuff.
We enjoy having you.
I love coming on. Thank you for having me, guys.
Sharing the story, and we'll stay.
And your little sister.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Barry.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.